Hi, everyone. So I didn't write a card.
But in your mind, somewhere in the minds of the people, there are questions to be had.
He's really active on Threads now,
Quantity.
so we have a lot of information available.
Did you say threats? You gave a lot of
That's
threats out
threats.
this weekend. What's up, Pimp? This threats.
I had thought about trying to ask for questions from people.
Oh yeah, I thought
on
we did
Thread.
that. Maybe didn't.
Well, no, this is on Thread now.
Got it. Thread is
Mark
is-
Zuckerberg's Twitter.
Yeah, I was gonna say Zuck's twit.
And then I just started answering people's questions instead of just taking them.
That means you found yourself some passion.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I was really excited, and I thought it would be interesting to go over what I responded to see if you guys had any input on it.
Threads, dude. Threads for threats.
We're checking your work. Is that
Or
what
to
we're
see if
saying?
you
We're
have
checking your
anything
work?
to add.
Oh, maybe some cliff notes for the boys and girls out there. People.
I should have got that espresso. If this is the train we're rolling on, all
I've
right,
got
let's
espresso.
go.
It was very clean,
Listen,
actually.
you
Very
guys
delicious.
Change the direction
You know what?
of the
You
train.
just start talking,
just
and
plan
we're gonna
it.
start responding.
Plant a seed. We'll
This
see
is
what
how
happens.
conversations work. Talk and response. So call us
All right, let's
to
go
respond.
let's go to the fishing one.
Fishing.
Fishing.
Have you ever been fishing?
Okay, I'm
no.
a salmon egg guy in a river, and you got to find the deep spots and look for shade or under, like places where the rocks are under. That's where the trout are. Catch and release, unless you're going to go straight to cooking them or putting them on ice. Put them out of their misery quick. You don't want them to get any adrenaline. It'll make them taste more fishy. And for people who think that the milk helps, I don't think so, dog.
Milk?
Yeah, people say that milk makes it less fishy, like soak them in milk. Which,
Ew.
whether that's true or not, I'm like, whatever,
Gross,
dude. Anyways, that was fishing.
Somebody just went camping.
I didn't fish though.
I'm an outdoors guy now.
Yeah. You don't have to go fishing when you camp.
No, you do, and I felt like I didn't camp
Okay.
because I didn't fish.
You
So
shoot any
I was just
guns or what?
outdooring. I didn't shoot guns, but there are a bunch of people with like dune buggies up there and horses.
Doom buggy.
Anyways,
All
back
right.
to you fishing.
Somebody reached out.
Like Amish paradise out there.
I asked, what are some challenges you're currently facing?
Nice
And
pointed question.
One person
General
reached out and
problems.
said how to deal with the fact that growth is a lot of times like fishing. You have to keep casting your line out in a lot of spots and might be a waste of time, but trusting that eventually you may catch something worth keeping. They went on to say sales, trying new menus, trying to grow to multiple locations, etc. To which I responded, when you fish, you're doing a lot more than just casting. Looking over it, looking at it that way overshadows all the little variables that are a part of it. If you're ever feeling stuck, change your perspective. Zoom out and see if you're on track for your larger goal, or zoom in and refine the little processes along the way. Goals help keep progression in perspective. How do you guys feel about fishing?
I feel like using the general analogy of fishing, and I felt like the assumption is you just like throw something in there and hopefully you get something, and that analogy doesn't work for me because there is, like you said, a lot more intention involved.
So much more to it.
It's like I just said, I literally just told you how to fish for the kind of trout, the fish that I know how to fish for, right? In these certain lakes, rivers, I'm sorry, not lakes. I don't know how to fish lakes. I know how to fish rivers, which maybe you could start there. What do you know about? There's something you know about something when it comes to business or anything. So start there. What do you know about? What do you feel like you have been interested in? And then like I know how to catch a certain kind of fish. And I know because I've had some experience. So hopefully this person did. That's going to help you decide what to do with your business. But like I said, for me, it's been a salmon egg and a certain amount of weight that gets to a certain depth. And you walk up and down these rivers and you look for specific spots. Sounds like you could be scouting a location. Weird. And those spots
Yeah.
are going to be good or bad, potentially. So you don't know everything based on some variables. For me, it's like, is there deep spots with shadows? Are there places where the rocks come out and you can tell that there's spots underneath the rocks for, say, a fish to hide?
Jared went away for a week and suddenly he knows everything about
No,
fishing.
it's funny. Well,
This
no.
is on fire.
Look
dude.
for the
I was-
shadows?
He's like,
If we're gonna ask about
look
it,
for the shadows.
I grew up fishing with my grandparents. That's why they'd take me fishing at this place called Walker River, and we'd catch you could catch your limit, and if you knew exactly where to put the salmon egg, you could catch your limit of 10 fish in less than an hour because of the spots. So that's for me. I'm like that's I can know some things, right? So anyways, if it's a deep lake, you got to find the right amount of weight you put in there. Deep river, sorry. If not, that's it. But you keep throwing it in that spot, slowly reeling it in, and boom, you got a fish at the end.
Well,
They,
I mean, the question they're asking is how do you deal with that? And that's a really hard question to answer because I think the fishing analogy works for me where it's with almost everything in life, you're engaging in this process, hoping for a certain outcome with absolutely no guarantee that the outcome will come.
yeah.
Sure.
You know, some days you catch a lot, some days you might catch nothing. Some days you're fishing somewhere else. Some days it's just you have no idea. So it's really the question is kind of how do you keep how do you stay motivated to work despite all the uncertainty or to
Well,
do what you need to do despite all the uncertainty?
That's why I was saying that simplifying it just casting is oversimplifying it because
Agreed.
you're doing so much more. They came back and they said these are their initial thoughts after me saying that. 1, educate yourself, study the industry, and they likened it to get a fishing license, which is
Okay.
just fun.
Yeah.
Then they
Have
went
they
on.
been fishing? Because that's just
I don't know.
$5 and you don't learn anything from getting a fishing license. You literally just, that's no offense, but the fishing license is
Yeah.
but yeah, educate yourself is super
Educate
wise.
yourself.
Just to rip on you a little
They
bit.
went on to say have the right tools.
Yeah.
And they also followed it up with, are you in the right place? They said, are you in the right place to receive feedback? And is your mission, vision, values engaging the right people? And they likened that to find your lucky fishing spot. Great.
Sure.
The shadows.
The shadows.
What we do in the shadows.
So it's just really interesting to go. They went from this perspective of I'm just casting and hoping to find
Yeah.
something to, oh, I see all these different areas in which I could start to learn or I could focus on, and I'm not just casting.
Which
So-
is that's a fun, engaging concept to talk through for sure.
Yeah.
I still think, I mean, yeah, you're not going to know what you're going to get back every day, like you said, Chris. It is going to be up and down, but I still think that there is more to success than in terms of the intentionality, right? Like I see so many places that I feel bad for because it looks like they have a concept they want to execute on, but they don't do their due diligence and find like the right space for it. So you have a place that is either it's tucked away in a place that's either really ugly or it's just not the right building. It's like, dang, this could be awesome, but nobody's going to find it, nor does anybody want to come here. And I feel bad for a lot of people who put a lot of money into a project and they don't maybe have the patience to find the right locations for whatever it might be. I see it all the time. There's all these towns we go through, and even in ours, I'm like, dang, why did they pick this spot? It's such a bummer. And sometimes you're like making a bet on yourself, but I think you have to be educated enough to know, like, if I'm going to pick a location that's going to only be seen or like not be interesting, that I need to have more plans to either get people there and find a way to retain them, or a long enough runway of spending money to know that I'm going to like spend a year or two establishing this space. You know, I think when we opened Verve back in the day, that first spot, right? A lot of people were worried about it, which I thought was weird because it was so close to the ocean at the end of the street. But
Such a good
at
spot.
the end of 41st, at that time, there wasn't much there at all. And there needed to be a runway for sure because it was another quote unquote, another coffee shop in town. But at the same time, to me, and for anybody I think who had any sort of vision whatsoever would see, oh no, this is clearly going to be an awesome location very soon, right? It's visible. You're passing it on the way to the ocean. You literally are going to drive as close to it as possible on the way away from the ocean after you surf. It's walkable to one of the best surfing spots in all of Santa Cruz. Like, it's going to be awesome no matter what, as long as we give it, the attention that it's going to get. So it's interesting to me because you could do that same thing and say you actually tried to open up a cafe, like, I don't even know, like in the back corner over here, it might be a little harder than if you are visible and you're like in a space where it's attractive kind of by default outside, like literally walking by, it's kind of a semi-attractive area.
But I mean, if your goal is to have a boutique cafe, like have a really cool just place where your cafe is really dialed and you don't care about reaching as many people, corner spot like that
Could be cool.
is Chris's favorite spot.
Yeah. But
what are we even talking about?
How
right
many
now?
Chris's are out there?
Like, what's happening? We went from fishing to find a good location. I'm so confused right now.
It's okay.
Let's do it though. I'm
Find a
ready.
good location.
Find a good location.
Well, that was one of the things you could do with fishing is find a spot.
Find a
That's
spot.
what you're talking about.
Because
Finding
you
a good
know,
spot.
I mean, that's one thing. Yeah, and people spend a lot of time. Well, he was talking about resources too, and there was something to do with growth in the question, right?
Yeah, you're just saying like to grow. Sometimes it just feels repetitive. Anyway.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing is Jared sees the analogy, Chris doesn't.
Questions are kind of a dud for me, honestly.
right.
This question's a dud.
It's so broad. It's like, how do I live life not knowing what's going to happen, but I have to live it anyway?
Yeah, but that's what people need help with sometimes. They
All right,
need help,
the-
like being able to see, like for instance, that is a point. People don't see that the location really matters, and I think that's huge.
I think people know location matters.
Then we'll go around and look at all these businesses in town that could be cool but have shitty locations. Like, are they, like
Maybe
but do
that
you
was
think
maybe
they're
that
in
was
those-
just
Do you
the-
think they're in those locations because it was like their first pick for location?
yeah, or maybe
You
that
know
was
what I mean?
just
Like,
the
that's
hand
what
they
I'm
were dealt.
saying. Well,
Where-
it's not the hand they're dealt because they have to pick the location, they have to sign a lease, they have to make a decision.
Let me
So, like,
let me-
sitting on your idea longer and finding a location that's going to promote your success is far better than saying I'm going to open up this business no matter what and putting yourself behind, super far behind. That's what I'm saying.
Were there other locations you guys were looking at for Portola?
The dream location was the old barn that was on Portola. And
Right, but that's like $5 million.
38.
No, it's just unavailable.
Oh,
We
it
looked at
Mhm.
Aptos actually.
The exact spot.
The same spot. We put in a letter of interest there, but they denied us because we didn't have any track record, which is totally understandable. That probably wouldn't have been a great first location for us.
No, that would have been slow and hard.
It would have been a lot slower. There weren't too many other things. I mean, we got really lucky, is the truth. Like, we got super, super
There is
lucky.
some luck that comes into fishing.
There's a lot of luck that came into, I mean, it's this combination, people say that whole thing where it's like, yeah, luck, and we were also prepared for it, right? We got lucky that Dale and Brenda wanted to lease us the building, but we laid the foundation for years just by showing up and treating everybody who we came into contact with super, super well. So it's like if we would have been complete assholes when we were working behind the counter on 41st, there's no way we would have got that lease even if it was available.
Right.
So that's a whole different story. That's a story that really resonates that I try to tell people. I don't know if they pick up on it a lot, but it's just like everything you're doing matters way more than you actually think it does. If you come into work and just call it in, you're not just calling it into your job. You could be calling it in and missing opportunities for something that's way, way bigger and way more important that you can't even imagine yet. So it makes sense to A, treat other people well, B, show up at your job with respect and intentionality and do the best work that you can. I think if you do those things, things are going to be good. You have those opportunities. Like you're more likely to get those opportunities if you do that. Again, it's not a guarantee, but you
You got to believe there's a possibility.
Well, it's education and
well, it's not even
preparedness,
about
too.
believing in the possibility. It's like, yeah, you would hope that there's a possibility. You are more leveraged to do those things if you show up like that.
Yeah.
And it works in smaller things too, where it's what are the opportunities in the organization that you have, even if it's just something as simple as one of the coolest things about jobs that I've had was I had the opportunity to go on a lot of trips, and I had companies that supported me in going on those trips. Now, when you have 50 employees at a company and there's 4 that go on trips, why are those 4 going on trips? It's not just a random thing, It's not just, I pick someone just because. It's generally people who are providing value outside of the normal day-to-day job, or who are so engaged in their job on such a level that the organization sees them as, I would enjoy for them to represent me at this industry function or at Origin or at a barista competition or, whatever it is. So those are smaller rewards that are meaningful that you can get just by showing up. Again, there's no guarantee that you will get them. There's no guarantee that your employer will recognize that, but it does give you a better shot.
Yeah.
You are more likely to do that than the person who comes in, does the bare minimum, and kind of phones it in.
There's
you can tell they
no-
can't tell.
There's
They
no
can't- they don't care.
guarantee. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no guarantee that the guest you're serving across the counter, who is a realtor, will actually approve you to lease the building you want, which would be perfect for your future location.
But
Correct. There's
you
no
do
getting
have
back.
you do have live wire feedback and education all along the way if you decide to be a studier of people and your work.
Sure.
So it's like every single moment.
Out of your industry.
Yeah, but also study the human study. Call that like that's
Just
more
the
important.
industry. The industry is in like who's coming into you.
I go broader.
Sure.
Humans, literally, like whether industry or not, because it's not industry. Humans aren't industry in our
Yeah,
cafes. Humans are humans.
Yeah.
So what you're doing every day is you're getting live wire feedback from concierge station, from barista stand, as much as you'd like, based on how well you're doing. If you decide to interact with them and engage with them, and to me, that's the study that tells you, what am I going to get a response from when I start a business? And if you're paying attention to that every single day, you're going to know you try things. And you do have standards from a business perspective and a missional company perspective, but that's, I think, a lot of our success is what you're doing there is you're educating yourself for whenever you're going to do whatever you're going to do next. You're going to know, if I do it like this, I get generally this response. You get this huge case study of thousands and thousands and thousands of people of, if I talk like this and act like this is the response I generally get. And you get to do a really diverse case study of realtors, lawyers, doctors, moms, dads, et cetera, and you're going to get a broad scope understanding, if you're paying attention and if you're trying, of how people are going to respond to the work you do, the quality of the coffee, the quality of whatever you put out.
Yeah.
You really are just doing research all day long in a really engaging, meaningful, personal way. And to me, that's why fishing in the way that I was talking about it makes sense, is like, if you know the river has fish, there's only a certain amount of spots where you're going to get them. And so, like, and then if you know how to catch them, that's kind of where my mind keeps going with this analogy, is like, yeah, you maybe aren't going to catch as, like, at the beginning of the business, right? You're not going to catch as many as you're going to catch later on, but you are going to know how to catch a fish for sure. And you can kind of bank on yourself, be like, I'm going to get some. And that to me is like invaluable. And it does start. It can start if you decide you want to be this kind of person in the long haul, like the day you walk into any job, especially in service. Honestly, hospitality is like a great way to learn about people.
Mm-hmm.
A weird way to learn about people for a lot of folks, but they don't necessarily look at it like that, because you're right. You can phone it in and it has to be a job, and it's tiring, and it's
Because they might not be seeing it from the broad. They might be seeing it too tight of a way. They're like, I got to do this task, this task, this task, this task.
and it can feel dead end. I get it if you
But
don't have that ambition.
But you have to understand that there's usually people on the other end of each one of those tasks.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
every interaction a day is a person. And so, yeah, we talk about it being important all the time, but it's genuinely interesting if you want to learn about this stuff for your future. And that application goes for any job you'll ever have in the future. For anywhere, right? Because you're going to have to work with humans somewhere. So at least you can understand how it might work better or worse for you as you co-interact with peers. So that's kind of where I get excited about that concept. So I can guarantee you that you can learn a lot from that intro level spot for this kind of application.
Yeah.
Cool story, Hansel.
All right, Chris didn't like that question. Let's find another one.
Next question. Can't like everything.
You got so many questions, though.
Yeah, we can't like everything.
There was a lot.
Well, you fucked up by trying to answer them all already.
It's not that I tried to answer them all.
Oh,
I
you
did.
did.
I did answer them all. Oh, claiming. Hey,
I was trying to
you gave some
lead
good
into
insight.
this one with the whole getting into the first cafe, because there was some aspect of, you guys talk a lot about starting Portola and going, we didn't have a choice. We had to get, we had to open by a certain day, or so you had a lot of things like that, to where it's like somebody might not have an option of what building they're in because that's the cards. That's ultimately how
I
things shook
see.
out for them.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, what's the one thing you regret not doing when you launched your first cafe? Alternatively, what is the absolute non-negotiable when y'all launched your first cafe? And I responded saying, regret has such a negative connotation. The limitation of our first cafe was how much money we had. So there are things that we might have wished we had that we didn't. Absolutely. But but we don't have regret over that limitation. We look back and see what we accomplished with what we had and have pride for what we learned. And then I said the non-negotiable was to do. When adversity came, we couldn't stop. Did that mean we had to pivot? Yes. Did that mean we made mistakes? Absolutely. But we're here now and we're proud to be.
So am I supposed to answer the question or comment on your answer?
That one. And if you have anything else to add. Is there anything I missed? Am I off the base in answering it that way? Is there anything you do regret?
I don't really regret anything.
Exactly.
You can't regret anything. That's just not productive. It's not the right word.
That's why I said it has like such a negative connotation, because it's
I mean, if you're looking back to the past, obviously you see some things that you would do differently, but that doesn't mean you regret what you did. You did the best job that you could with the knowledge that you had.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. Like, what else are you going to do? That's a lot of these questions. It's kind of like, what's the alternative? You know,
Right.
What's the alternative? If the only alternative is to have it absolutely perfect right out of the gate, well, that's not even an option. So it's just playing forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's no regret. And even to the point, Weiser, you were talking about with like, hey, you know, like maybe you got a little bit lucky with Portola and this other location. But the other thing is, it's like we started moving at a rate we did based on signing a lease and finding the location. And before that, we were, I think, wise enough or educated enough to know where we wanted to be versus didn't want to be. So we wouldn't have found ourselves, I don't think, in a location that we weren't excited about in some capacity, right? Whether... Yes, Aptos would have been a slower, longer path for sure, especially with the build out of the whole, you know, area still going right now, you know, 6 years later.
Yeah.
But we also weren't just going to like go into anywhere because we loved our cafe. Like, you know, we both had jobs that we were in at the time, or we were doing things that were able to sustain us for the life we had in the moment that we could have stayed working on. And so we were like, I guess we had discipline or boundaries enough to decide, like, we're going to go in a location that we believe we're going to make work. We're not going to go into a location because we want to start Cat and Cloud so bad, so fast, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't really have any regrets either. We laid a lot of foundation in the work we did prior, like we've been talking about this whole podcast. And then we put feelers out, and we were ambitious. You know, we were reaching out to, that's the thing. Like I reached out to Dale, who was not interested and not in, as far as we knew, in commercial, right? I'm like, hey, you're in residential. I mean, it's the same thing with our contractor, Nico. It's like, we don't have contractors. Cool. I remember this guy, Nico. We like him. I know he does construction. I don't even know to what degree. And it's like, turns out from then to now, he's like the preferred contractor in town, like one of the two. So it's all these connections, and just like, hey, I don't know. You remember me? We didn't remember each other, but like, I know you're not in commercial, but do you know if you can put me in touch with somebody? Because people aren't, you know, giving us the time of day in commercial because we don't really have a track record otherwise, aside from like barista competitions. Like, actually, you know, and that's some of this too, is networking and being willing to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and be like, I can't do this. I need help, you know?
Yeah.
And that stuff goes a long way too. Next question. No regrets, dude.
No regrets.
Not even a single letter.
Well,
no regrets.
Their follow-up to that was, wow, that helped me zoom out from my laser focus on just getting it all done perfectly right in this first big moment of my journey. So good perspective. Anyway,
perfect is not even a real thing in the world.
This was a really fun one. It's really short, and it's I'll preface it by saying sorry that wasn't helpful, but they said, how to tell if my grind is consistent enough. So I said, if you grind your coffee the same way every day, then it's consistent.
What an asshole. You're just
That's funny though. I like that one.
I went on. I did a better. Anyway, like I said, I prefaced it with sorry. This wasn't helpful.
What? What were you doing on Threads? Like, what was the impetus for getting on Threads and connecting with people?
I was trying to figure out what card to write today, and then I thought, oh, I'll see what feedback there is on here right now.
But you did this Friday, right?
No, I did this yesterday.
You did this yesterday. You were on Threads.
Yeah.
He was fishing, if you will.
I was fishing. I was trying to get my pre-work in.
Where do you think you'd fish the?
How do you usually write the card? What's the usual process for the card?
So, for example, we recently just updated our values here, right? And I have a whole document that has ideas that have come across throughout the week, and one of them was, oh, our values, they just changed. And I wrote out this whole thing. And I was like waiting for the question to come from it. And I just realized I just kept writing and I didn't actually ask a question. And this was all just like facts, more or less. So I'll pull it up. It said our value. So the question basically, like, I come up with topics and I will write them as they feel appropriate. So I tried to write one that was appropriate because based on our values. And I guess I never actually wrote any questions, but it says our values are the guiding tools for our actions and decision making. And we selected these specific values because we believe they empower our team with the most efficient and supporting path towards achieving our mission. Inspire connection by creating memorable experiences. That mission is something we desire to achieve with our team members as well as with our guests. For example, having a value of hospitality makes sense when providing a service to a guest, but you might not realize how it can be applied to your teammates. When working in an environment where teammates show hospitality to one another, working together with empathy and intention, the possibility of someone walking away inspired about what work can be or what they're able to achieve is much higher. I wrote all that and I was like, what do they talk about with that?
I don't think you're answering Christian's question though. Where do you find? How do you?
No. I'm saying I would write all. I would
you
write
were
these
trying to start.
I was
and
trying
then
to start
find
a card.
I see what you're
and
saying.
I just wrote that.
So you start with an idea,
and I start with
you
an
kinda
idea,
riff on
and then
it
I
a little
try to
bit,
figure out how
and
to
then
ask it.
see if the question presents itself.
Yes.
Where are your fishing holes for these questions?
So I wrote these this morning, and I didn't get a chance to create the card. But I said, how did you pick them? How do you guide someone to finding their own values? Not telling them the answer, rather sharing how you found your way so that they might be able to find yours. So, for example, what are some things that stood out to you guys as owners that inspired you to want to have the values that support our mission? Like, what inspired you to think that hospitality is something that could be applied in all the different ways that we imply it?
There's a question.
Welcome to the podcast.
Start with your case study. Like I went back to the beginning. Start watching what works and what matters and where the engagement starts happening between peers, teammates who work for a place, what's missing and what could improve on an experience. But for me, that's a huge part of it is all that people study and combining it with things that mattered and made at times, like when the morale's the highest, when those things hum, like with morale being high, so shall business be high, in my opinion. Like morale and business work together. And so it's funny. It's like, I mean, you can still make a lot of money without morale being high, but if you bring up morale, your business will continue to go up. So I think all these things can work together, in my opinion, to cohesively make a beautiful picture. You mix human need with business need, and you find your path forward in your own way. And I guess we have our specifics, but that's your general quick answer to how I look at values for a business. And then again, giving people a place to meet.
I think what I also want to hear is, because I know that a few months back, all three owners, all three of you, Chuck included, sat down on your truck was passing. I know it's going to be really loud.
Sat down, got our megaphones out.
You sat down on your Monday meetings, and you guys set time aside to go through and refine them. And back in January, as the executive team, we met, and you guys soft launched these values to us. I think they were slightly different. So it's like, what conversations were had between then and now to refine them to where they are? Like, is there anything that stands out to you looking back on that, going, oh, we talked about hospitality because it was part of this thing, hats, and we realized that, it actually applies. I don't know. What are some of the
I think you're approaching it from a different direction.
Okay.
So that sounds like you're approaching it like almost analytically, or in my mind, values are more feelings and emotional based. So in the same way that you have your own set of personal values, at least for me, my personal values are based off of the way I feel or the way things feel when certain things click. So if I'm thinking about, something like hospitality, it's a little bit, the way I get there is different than what we talked about before when we were talking about, oh, you have this opportunity, even if you're just working the register in a cafe to connect with people or improve people's days, like you know, that's awesome. But for me, I look inside, and when I feel like I do something that takes care of someone fully and makes someone's day special, I like the way that feels.
Yeah.
Like values are kind of a selfish thing, even though when you channel them through the context of a business, they work to serve other people. But I think you can't get there from the outside in. They have to be true and honest to you. And because of that, at least for me, they feel really, really emotional. And I think it's hard for people, it's probably hard for a lot of businesses to take the deepest parts of their emotion and wave them like a flag. Because once you do that, you're really, really exposed. You're saying, these are the things that are the most important to me. This is a belief system for me, in a sense.
Yeah.
And this is what I have to share with the world. And this is my unique contribution. When we do all these things right, these like magical things happen. And that's why, people shouldn't have the same set of values. It would be weird if our values were the same as Dunes, were the same as Verve's, were the same as Intelligentsia's. That would be really, really strange. There's probably some overlap when you're taking people, it would be odd if you were in the hospitality industry and didn't like serving others.
Yeah.
That would be strange. But there's all these little things that are more emotional than facts-based.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the art, is trying to, and I think I think to your point, being vulnerable enough to try to turn your values into a realistic living, breathing thing and share them with people is probably scary for some people, but I think that's maybe the difference between the businesses that are special or versus the ones that aren't, and where you can resonate. And I think the magic and the artistry is finding a way to take them and share them, and then it is, from your point of view, how do you operationalize them, right? Because somebody else has to be able to, you have to find a way to connect with the emotion to whoever you're working with.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most challenging part, because it is slightly easier to give steps of service in hospitality. However, you can't do that without a lot of experience, right? In that case study to begin with. So you can, but I think you can do it and save a lot of energy by putting forth the effort and learning along the way and finding where does my personal value in that fire come from, and then how do I both talk about it and share it and instill it over and over and over again, which is forever going to be the work. And then how can I turn it into something that people can physically grab and do, even when they don't fully understand it on the level that we do? Because it's, and the people who've been here the longest have danced with those values in conversation longer. And I think people can grab them from the very beginning and resonate with them. We try to do values-based interviewing to help with that. And I think that's why we consistently bring on some of the most amazing team members ever.
I have Google notifications turned on my phone. And
Security alert. Again.
And I constantly see the so-and-so left you a great review. And consistently, it is friendliest people.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see that, knowing that hospitality and taking care of people is, at the core of us, and how it's been consistent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean,
we got an invitation to a wedding.
Yeah, in Washington.
In the mail. Yeah. And
who's going? Send somebody, dude. Call them on their invitation. We invited all 7.
So, but I thought that, but they wrote on there, like, we came in, we were visiting from out of town. We came in, and your team made us feel like family. They gave us like samples of like all these different coffees, and like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome that.
Did they specify? I can't remember. Did they specify which cafe they went to or store?
No, they didn't.
Man, that'd be so
coming
sick
from
if
San Francisco, I would guess that it was Swift, but I don't know. But that's also what's.
Hey, Tanner and Kendall, right? Was that their names? No, Kendall Tanner, my friends, but Tanner and
It was Tanner.
no,
and Tanner.
it's Tanner and somebody. That's how I remember
Hey,
it.
Cat and Cloud.
Tanner and somebody.
Tanner and like is another T. I don't know. It's in on the desk.
Yeah, write in.
but-
Tell us which store. Maybe we could send some of them up, dude.
But
Call your bluff,
Hey,
dude.
who'd you
We're all
talk to?
coming.
the fact that they didn't write what store is awesome because I believe that they would get that experience no matter the cafe they
And
went
they
to.
maybe went to more than one.
Yeah.
To be honest, yeah.
And that's why I shared it with the retail team because it was, hey, we didn't prompt you guys to make these people like we didn't say, oh, like the wedding couple's coming in, make them feel special. No, you did that for anyone that came in.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see that it's not interesting. It's awesome to see such a consistent experience of our team members wanting to take care of people.
Totally.
And that's, I don't know,
So
it makes me happy.
I mean, you take that full circle, and it's like somebody moves to Washington, and they're looking for somebody, and it just so happens that Tanner or Kennelin or whatever their names are, one of them is the
Kennelin.
one of the Kennelin's the
Kenneling.
camp.
Kenneling.
One of them's the contact that they connect with that really helps them on the next step, and they're like, "Oh, you were at that place? You served me this thing? I got your back. We're going somewhere." Not
Taylor and Tanner.
Taylor's.
Taylor and
Tay and
Tanner.
Tan.
Tay and
Maybe.
Tan.
You know, that stuff is amazing, and yeah, shout out to the whole team for that.
So the values are essentially like closest thing to you that you're just your closest beliefs that you're airing out to the rest of the world.
I mean, it's there's no different. The only difference between personal values and organizational values like ours is that your own personal values are for you to decide, right?
You
Cat and Cla-
only you and only you have to live
You
by
and
them.
only you, yeah, have to live with them, have to execute on them. And one of the things that we talk about in orientation to, explain why values are so important to us is just that. Everyone has a set of personal values, a set of beliefs. And when you live according to those values and according to those beliefs, you feel good about yourself. Even when you have to make hard decisions, even when those values take you down a hard path, you still feel good. And when you make decisions that go against those values, even if it's for short-term gain, you feel kind of icky inside. You feel kind of gross.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with an organization. We have to figure out some sort of a compromise or higher order value set because myself, Jared, and Charles are three different individuals with
Yeah.
a ton of overlapping interests and passions and core values, but we're not the same person,
Mhm.
right? So we're coming together to form an organization that's bigger than any of the three of us. So that's part of the conversation. That's not necessarily the conversation of this last values update. So there's a couple things that can change to make you want to, quote unquote, redo your values.
Yeah.
Usually for us, it's not changing the core of what we believe. It's finding a better way to express what we've always believed.
Yeah.
So hospitality is by far and away the best word we could use to talk about what we're trying to foster that environment. And it was like we talked about in the meeting, it is strange that it was never part of our values in
Yeah.
the beginning. It didn't make sense. And it was so magnetic that we tried to work it in, like you were saying, in other parts of the business, in other acronyms that we had going on. So that's a way that they can change. Another way that they can change, I mean, we haven't been completely sheltered from outside influence.
Mhm.
As we're learning and growing, and there are demands put on the business, sometimes by the people in it, sometimes by the culture at large, that make you feel like you want to shift in a certain way. Like we've done some value shifts that just didn't work out, probably because at our core, maybe we didn't really believe in them necessarily, even though we're just trying. So
You found a way to convince yourself that it was right or something like that.
yeah, it feels like it could be right, maybe, but I
I
don't
like we
really
just had,
believe
I
it,
think
but-
we maybe hadn't articulated it as well.
Mm.
It's like assuming that hospitality was clear because even though we never said hospitality was clear.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if we leave people happier when we found them, then we did our job, and that's hospitality. But we didn't say hospitality, so then it's not in our, our values. It's part of our mission,
Yeah.
and it's said via like a subset of saying our mission. So it's clear, right? And it's like, no, it's actually not. We just
Well,
maybe learned.
I'm drawing a blank too, though, because I think there was some point. I remember when we were meeting in Cruzio downtown with the leadership team, and there was some values restructuring then, and I can't remember what the values were, but I remember there being some discussions, and I was just like, I don't know, and I can't even remember. It feels like so far.
Well, I think at the time we
away.
were also, and trying to learn, and the external influences is exactly part of this. We were including like 9 people and trying to tell us what our values were.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like they were telling us what their personal values were, and sometimes out of everybody's trying to do the right thing, but you're not necessarily tying it into our overarching business and how it works. You're tying it into just your personal vibes, and you're like, well, we believe in this, so this is what we're, and we, when you have trusted compadres, you kind of can get sucked into that, and I think we did a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you think about it in the context of growth, because you're saying you will refine them over time as you learn better ways. The person who is asking about, what do you regret not having, and what was a non-negotiable? I was gonna go on and say, think of it like art. How many times does an artist redraw the same thing each time, making it better and better and better? A sculptor doesn't who sculpted who sculpted the David?
Michelangelo.
Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. You were getting it from the beginning.
Michelangelo didn't
David
go in
sculpted
there.
the Michelangelo.
He didn't go in there.
But with hands.
But I mean,
And arms.
you go in there, you do big chunks, you cut out big chunks, and then you refine over time. You're not gonna, when I draw a drawing, how many times am I redrawing it, just refining the lines each time to get it more clearly into the picture that I want it to be? That, same thing with the values. You're like, we have this rough idea, and right now, these 4 or 5 things best summarize that. And as you grow and as you learn them and as you use them, you learn, yeah, this is actually better represented with hospitality.
Yeah, you're
and
refining.
that you refine it.
I totally
it was
agree.
just that imagery of like watching Michael Foy draw a drawing. He'll sketch it out really quickly, and then a new layer, and like, I really like this line. Okay, I'm gonna refine that, and then you ink it, and then you do it. Okay, cool. I like the sticker stroke here, and it's just kind of an interesting way of refining what you work on.
process.
Yeah. You're not going to come out perfect with the best values each time. And likewise, you shouldn't be scared when you decide, I need to change them.
Right. Because you're not changing the spirit of what you believe.
Right.
I mean, think about it in the context of writing. Let's say you're not a writer. You don't write at all on a regular basis, but you have an idea that you want to share with the world, and you decide to write a book on it. How good is that book going to be? Probably not very. Even though the idea might be pure, and maybe in some sense you kind of understand it, but if you've never practiced doing what you're trying to do, you're not going to do it that well. And that's good. That's fine. You do that, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. Who are you smiling at?
Whoever.
Someone coming in the
Just
parking lot pretty
hospitality.
What a nice guy.
Smile, make eye contact. Hospitality.
Hospitality.
Partial.
It was such a glow. It looked like you
Yeah.
just saw your best friend.
Tell me that guy doesn't want to come in here, dude.
Yeah.
Don't
It's
even
my
know
viral marketing
You
campaign.
just like his Camry, don't you?
I'm a camera guy.
I have
You're-
one too.
You're a Camry guy.
You're
a
It's
camera
the
guy?
same
Sorry.
color, dude.
I
LS?
really derailed you with my smile.
No, that's fair.
It's okay. That happens.
I
a
was
the
lot.
whole
pretty
point,
much,
dude.
I was pretty
Derail
much
is not-
done.
How's it going? Awesome.
Oh, you bet.
See, the hospitality
My
continues.
first value is underailable.
Underailable.
Unrailable.
So that was the thread. Keep pulling it, and the whole thing will unravel.
No, but here's the thing: if you change your values to something that's like Chris said is not in the same spirit, it won't feel right. It'll feel weird.
Yeah.
And then there's a difference between refining and changing. So, towards the beginning when we refined the first time, I remember immediately it was like so much resistance the first time, and that's because there was this fear of like, no, we're changing. It's like, nope, we're getting clearer.
Yeah.
We're getting clearer. It's gonna help, and they have consistently gotten, I think, better over time, even when we were off. And so, I think they will be as perfect as you can make them each time. There's
Yeah.
no way around that.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna do your best, hopefully, and if you do it intentionally and you kind of do your back work to try to see how things connect, right? The mix between operations and emotions, and where those two things intersect. Like if you do your best with that, you're gonna have a better outcome than the people who don't. And that's kind of that's why you can't really look back and have regrets, because it is literally the best you can do. And only you'll know. Like that's why I can look back and be like, dude, I spent as much brain power as possible putting this together with those guys. So there's nothing I could have done better at the time, given the hand that I was dealt.
I mean, when I look back at the business, the things that I do regret are the times when we did something that wasn't in line with our core values.
Yeah.
Just to kind of make it work in the moment. Those things are more regrettable. Those things are regrettable. Opening a store and not having everything perfect is not regrettable at all.
And you will make mistakes too. Just for everybody out there, like you're gonna do it because there's only so much human capacity. And I think usually when we made those poor mistakes, we were like at the end of our ropes and making rush decisions. And you can always take more time, and that's maybe our learning has been kind of consistently our learning over time. But there's gonna be times where we will make those mistakes because we're just burnt, and you're just like, dude, I got to do something, and that's part of the learning too. And you'll know that's the best part. If they're against your values, then you kind of you'll know in the gut. And if it's not, and if it isn't the values and a mistake, you just kind of like know in your heart and you're sad about it. You don't have any regrets or shame. You're like, damn, that was gross, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough to run a business. Tough to be a human though, too. So shout out to all you humans out there.
That's interesting. So what you just said actually reminds me of your location analogy, where in the same way that you could rush into a poor location, you could also rush into a bad decision. And either way, what time has taught us is that it's always okay to take a little more time. You just have to be ready to deal with the consequences either way.
Right.
Because if you take a little more time, then
Something
you got to
happens.
eat a certain kind of, there's something that goes along with that. So when we were opening Portola, if we were going to take more time meant, working in jobs that were low paying, doing double duty, kind of, dealing with that stress and that struggle of what life was like at that particular moment. And going into a crappy location, you'd have to eat it on the other end. Where, okay, cool, maybe we got this good, fast start, and then this place sucks, so we can't actually...
You're actually
We're
doing
actually out of
more work.
business.
It's not sustainable. And the same thing is true about decisions, where it's like, if we make a decision where it's like, we need to think about this, we need to be thoughtful, some shit might go down in the time that we're putting off this decision so we can fully think about it, that we might have to jump in and take some action to whatever. Who knows?
Right.
You know what I mean? We could have some big decision to make, and it's like, if we don't make this decision now, half the staff's going to quit. It's like, okay, cool. That sucks. But this hasn't happened, by the way. But we need to do our due diligence in making the decision, so we have to be thoughtful about it. And then, that would be the right thing to do, even if half the staff quit. And then we would have a whole other host of things to do to plug that gap and to try to figure that out. We'd have other work to do.
Yeah.
But if we made the decision in alignment with our values, or didn't make the decision because we needed to run it by our values, we're still making the right decision, even though it maybe sucks right now.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is way more painful.
Good talk, everyone.
You always got something in the banana stand. Turns out fishing is a great analogy. Except for the license thing, okay? License are just basically a stamp. That's $5. Anybody
Yeah, but
can
that's
get
a
one.
part of the process.
It is part of the
That's where I
process.
feel
You
like
gotta
this
get the-
person's on point.
Ah.
I'm like
Oh,
giving him-
now you like the fishing analogy.
Well,
No, I didn't. I never had any beef with the fishing analogy.
there's no beef in fish,
I said
Chris.
the fishing analogy was on point.
There's no beef
Oh,
in
Where you're
fish.
engaging in a process with no guarantee of results,
oh, okay.
but you're trying your best and you're doing your due diligence, right?
Yeah.
So that's where when he said just casting, I never thought about it as like he's just casting. I'm assuming the whole time he's doing what he has to do, right? It's like, cool, I'm going to go get a rod. I'm going to go get some bait. I don't know if it's the right kind of bait, but I'm getting some kind of bait because I know I need some bait. Basic shit. I'm going to go to a place where maybe there's fish just because I heard about it. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm just doing my best. And that's how starting a project is, starting a business is. You have to have intention. You can't just be like, whoa, casting willy-nilly, or
willy-nilly casting.
you can't just be fucking
Can't
going
just
out
be casting out there
you can't just be going
willy-nilly.
out there willy-nilly.
That's why I can't fly fish, dude. I don't know how to fly.
You could learn though.
I could learn, but I can catch my fish with my salmon eggs. No waders.
Okay.
It's a mix between meditation and catching fish. Okay, bye.
I think that was a good one.
It was a good one.
How are you feeling, Chris?
I was feeling great. I was reminded about
Willy-nilly.
Seth Godin's story about fly fishing. He went on a fly fishing trip with a group of people, and he asked the teacher, because they had a teacher, it was like some sort of course or whatever. He asked the teacher if he had a fly with no hook on it. And the dude was like, I guess I could. Yeah, let me see. And he found one. So his whole group, it's like 4 or 5 people, they're out there, casting over and over again. And because he has no hook on his fly, he's not concerned at all with catching a fish. He knows he actually won't. So by the end of an hour or two, he actually had the best form out of anybody, because all that his mind is occupied by is the actual process and form of casting. And his friends are all stressed out about actually trying to catch a fish, and it's so distracting that it's making their casting worse. And it's just this interesting thing that sometimes, at the end of the day, you do need to have some sort of outcome. Like if you're a professional, you need to bring home the fish. Is it part of the story? But too often we get focused on that end thing and ignore everything that we need to put in to get there.
Fishing.
That was real good. Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.